Welcome back to Hold Fast, where we have biblical truths for daily battles. My name is Kenny. I am the host of the podcast, and today I'm going to be addressing the subject of gossip. This is something that I think we've all been affected by or participated in at some point in our lives. I know for myself, I grew up on a pretty small island where everybody knew one another and everybody knew what was going on in each other's lives, and so it was really easy to fall into this temptation and sin of gossip. And the problem with it is that it's something that's frequently condemned in the Bible, and yet it can be a sin that is one of the hardest sins to really identify and pin down as to what it actually is and when we are actually engaging in it. There's sometimes that you get accused of being a gossip, and that's not what you were doing. There's other times when you're gossiping and you're sure that you're not, but you are, and you need to be called out on it, right? Many of us have heard gossip shared in the form of a prayer request, right? Like somebody will send up and say, somebody really needs to pray for Susan because I heard that she was doing this and this and this, and it's this unverified thing that you share, and the person's not even in the room, and they haven't given you permission to share that, but yet you think that you're doing the right thing because you're sharing it as a prayer request. And so the truth is, many of us really like gossip because it gives us a chance to be in the know. It gives us a chance to feel like we're in control, or it gives us a chance to make ourselves feel better when we hear something really bad about somebody else, right? Because we feel like, well, at least I'm not doing that. And so it really is a very secret, very deceptive sin, really. It's something that it's hard to identify at times, and it's really easy to engage in without even realizing you're doing it. Proverbs 18 verse 8 says, the words of a whisperer, which is actually a word that is often used to describe somebody who's gossiping, a whisperer, right? So even in that word, you hear this like secretive nature often of gossip, this trying to hide it and trying to make sure that nobody really hears what's going on. But it says the words of a whisperer are like delicious morsels. They go down into the inner parts of the body. We crave this. We desire this for some reason. Our sinful nature desires to be a part of this and to engage in this. It's why some of us, myself not included, by the way, some people love to hear about the lives of celebrities, right? We love to hear what's going on in their personal and private lives, and when you really think about it, it's none of our business. It doesn't really matter that we know about that, and it's just not something that we really should be spending our time participating in. But we love the gossip. We love to hear it. It's why it's why those kind of websites and magazines and news outlets are so popular, because we all love this. But we really need to define what gossip is, right? We got to be able to identify it when it happens, because what I don't want to do in this episode is make you feel like you can never talk about anybody or any circumstance at any time because you're always running a risk of being a gossip. I'm not trying to make you overly cautious necessarily, but I do want us to be discerning. I do want us to be able to identify it and wrap our minds around what it actually is and when it's actually happening. And so I think it'd be helpful to talk about a few examples of situations that would classify as gossip. So something that came to mind was Proverbs 18 verse 13, which says, if one gives an answer before he hears, it is his folly and shame. In other words, if you have made up your mind about a particular person or situation before you even hear them out, before you even sit down with them to personally talk to them, and you don't have all the facts, but you're just going off of your first assumptions, and you're choosing to then share that with other people and give some public answer about that with other people, that's gossip. And Proverbs says that's folly and shame. It's foolishness, and it's shameful to do that. And it can lead to something that is even a step beyond gossip, I think, which is identified as slander, right? And slander is essentially gossip that's a lie about somebody. It is spreading false information about somebody else, and sharing that with other people, right? So that's slander. And I think when you don't sit down and talk with somebody and really hear what's going on with them, and you choose to talk about them anyway, that's foolishness, and that is gossip, and ultimately will even lead to slander. Something similar to that is in a few verses after that in Proverbs 18 verse 17, which says, the one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him. This is one of the most neglected verses, I think, in the entire book of Proverbs. I mean, really, How many times will somebody share something with you? They'll share their side of the story, and it involves other people in the story, but you believe every single thing that that person has shared, and you believe that it's true, and you don't even give attention to the fact that there might be another side of the story. And I get it, right? We have people in our lives, family members, friends who we trust and we love, and that person may not even be lying. That person may be telling the truth insofar as they see it, but the reality is there is always two sides to a story. I can't tell you how many situations I've been in as a pastor where I've seen this proven to be true. One person comes along and says their side of the story, and they seem right, they seem trustworthy, and then you hear the other side and you go, well, there were some things that you had right, but there's some things that you were seeing the wrong way that you really need to be corrected on. And I mean, it's almost every situation I've ever been in from a counseling point of view, right? There's always two sides to the story. And I believe you are at risk in engaging in gossip if you only have one side of the story. If you haven't sat down with the other person as well and listened to what they have to say, that absolutely can lead to gossip. And again, also to slander. Proverbs 19 verse 5 says, a false witness will not go unpunished, and he who breathes out lies will not escape. So this really matters. It really is important that we are on guard against gossip, that we make sure that we are, when we find ourselves involved in a particular conversation or situation, first of all, you need to ask yourself if you should be involved in that. We'll talk about that later. But if you find yourself in the middle of something, make sure you're doing everything you can to find out all the facts, to see all sides of the story, to get the truth before you even make an opinion about it. That's why if, for example, a husband comes to me for counseling and that he's sharing with me about their marriage and the struggles that he and his wife are having, I'm going to be very slow to give any advice or thoughts until I get a chance to also have the wife in the room and make sure that the truth comes out. If somebody in my church comes to me and they've got some beef with somebody else in the church, again, I want the other person to be there. We're not just going to have a conversation with just you and I. We want to make sure that we can get all sides of the story, because this is a serious thing. Another quality of gossip is that it always happens behind someone's back, right? I mean, it's not, you can't really define something as gossip if you're saying it to the person. It involves sharing bad news, whether it's true or not. It involves sharing bad news about somebody behind their back. If you are saying good things about somebody behind their back, then there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like that's a good thing to praise people to others. I think that can be a good and God honoring thing. But it's when you're sharing something that's bad, something that either it's sin that they've done or just something you don't like about them, or whatever it is, it's sharing bad news about somebody behind their back. So here's a couple questions you can ask yourself to begin to identify whether or not you are gossiping about somebody behind their back. You can ask, would I be telling this story if the person were here? A very basic question to ask is, would I have permission from this person to be sharing this information that I'm sharing right now? If they were here and they heard me sharing that, would they be okay with the fact that I'm saying this? Or would they be hurt and angry and upset with me over that? Another question to ask, similar, but another good question to ask is, would I want somebody else to talk about me this way if I weren't here? Right? Would I want somebody else to talk about me behind my back in the same way that I'm talking about this person behind their back? That's a good identifier, potentially, of whether or not you are gossiping about somebody. Because gossip really has a lot to do with our motives at the end of the day. This is where I'm really getting to the part of, this is how you can really begin to identify whether or not you're simply just having a conversation or if you're gossiping. Gossip is always done with a sinful motive. When you see gossip talked about in the scriptures, it always ties to the character of the person who's gossiping in some way, right? So gossip is always done with a sinful motive, such as anger. You're angry at this person because of what they did or said, whether to you or not, and so you're just telling other people about it because you're really angry. That's gossip. Maybe you're prideful, and so this gives you a chance to make yourself look better than the other person in front of the people that you're talking to. That's gossip. Maybe they hurt you and you really want to get back at them. And so one of the ways you can get back at them is to make sure that the people in their friends, their circles, their friend groups hear what they did. And so it's a way for you to get revenge. That's gossip. So you got to ask yourself, why am I telling this person this? That is so simple and yet such a revealing question. Before you share what you are about to share with somebody about somebody else, ask yourself, Why am I telling them this? And don't sugarcoat it. Maybe you need to ask your spouse to help you think through it. Maybe you need to ask a trusted friend to help you think through. And is what I'm about to say and share with this person, do you think that's gossip? Do you think my heart is in the right place in sharing this? I mean, there's not a whole lot of situations, by the way, where talking bad about somebody behind their back is going to be a good thing. I mean, if you're sharing bad news about somebody behind their back, there are very few situations where that's okay. There are some. So, I think of there are times that elders in a church need to discuss the known public sin of somebody in the congregation, right? To pray for them and to see how you're going to shepherd them. But even then, we do that where we are checking our motives. We're not pointing out the speck in somebody's eye when we got a log in our own, right? It's checking our heart and all of these things. But you're just going around telling everybody bad news about somebody because you're not motivated by a desire for forgiveness or reconciliation or to see this person repent. You're just trying to get back at them, or you're angry, or whatever the emotion is. Then that's gossip, and it needs to be called out. And so another question you can ask yourself is, as I'm sharing this information, is the fruit of the Spirit evident in my speech? Am I sharing this with love, patience, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, goodness, self-control? Is the fruit of the Spirit evident in my life as I share this story or not? It's good. It's a good thing to have really close, trusted friends in your life who you can share with them when somebody hurts you, right? So you might go to a trusted friend because somebody else in your life has hurt you, and you're trying to share this with that friend because you need prayer, you need help, you need guidance, you need wisdom, right? But when it's not okay is when you move from sharing with that trusted friend to the next trusted friend and to the next trusted friend and to this person and this acquaintance, and somebody hears that something's going on between you and this other person, so they come to you and ask what's going on, and so you share with them too. It's not their business. Right? I understand that they may be your friend and they love you, but at this point, you're starting to just spread this information to as many people as possible. And that's when it begins to turn into gossip. And it's so easy to fall into this trap. I'm not saying that every time you engage in gossip, it's because you are just this really terrible person who's trying to hurt everybody around you. I said this is a very deceptive sin. It comes in and creeps in, and we don't even know it's happening until we've just found ourselves engaged in it. And we got to be able to identify when that happens. So here's how you know something's turning into gossip, right? Versus I'm just sharing some information that's important to me with a few close friends. You know that it's gossip when you're beginning to share it with more than a few people. You know that it's gossip when you're going into more detail about the person than is necessary. You know that it's gossip when you're sharing with the intent to put a bad light on the other person and to make them look bad. You know that it's gossip when you're sharing it with no desire to be held accountable for your own sin. Like if you go to somebody to share how somebody else has hurt you, and that person looks at you and says, okay, I'm really sorry they hurt you. I want to pray for you in that. Where could you have possibly sinned in this situation? If they say that to you and your instant response is to get angry, chances are all you're seeking to do is gossip. You're not actually seeking the truth here. You're not actually seeking to rejoice in the truth and to condemn wrongdoing. You're actually just seeking to make this other person look bad and make you look like the victim in the story, right? And I'm not saying that every time somebody hurts you, you have sin to be called out on, but a lot of times we do, and we need somebody else who can see that and who can help us think through that. You know that that you're engaged in gossip when you're sharing this bad news about this person who hurt you, for example, and you're not open to forgiveness and reconciliation. You just want to tell everybody what they did so that you can cut them out of your life and just be done and move on with it. That's turning into gossip. A good principle would be to talk with this person that you are talking about. Go to them in person and talk and make sure that you get all the facts, as I said earlier. Something else is, as a principle, is to talk about people in the same way that you would pray for them. You would pray that they repent of their sin. You would pray that they desire forgiveness. You would pray that you desire forgiveness. You would pray that they have a desire for reconciliation, right? You would pray that the Lord would reveal to them truth, reveal to you truth, and that you'd be able to come together in forgiveness and reconciliation. You would talk about people in the same way that you should pray for them. That can be a good principle to implement. A final component of gossip that I want to share, and this is by the way, I don't know that one episode is nearly enough time. This is already going to be a little bit longer than normal. But this is just kind of a primer, an introduction to gossip. We can go so much deeper, but I just wanted to give you some general initial principles to identify it. A final component of gossip is when you reveal something that someone shared with you in confidence. And this is an obvious one, but sometimes we just don't even think, right? Like somebody comes to us and shares a struggle that they're having, a temptation, a sin, a problem, whatever it is that they're having. And we just immediately go out and share that with somebody else when that person didn't give us permission to do that. Now, if somebody comes to you and they share, for example, that they are wanting to harm themselves and they ask you not to share that, as a pastor, I tell people I'm obligated to share things like that. I love you too much to keep things like that a secret, right? So when somebody comes to me, for example, and says, "Can I share something with you?" and ask you not to share that with anybody else, and I always say it depends on what that is. Because if it's something that is potentially harmful or dangerous to you, then I'm going to have to share that with the appropriate people. But if it's not one of those situations and somebody is sharing something with you in confidence, then it's gossip for you to just go out and share that with other people if they haven't given you permission to do so. I mean, for example, often when people share prayer requests with me as a pastor, I will ask them, "Do you mind if I share this with the elders and staff?" And some people give you that permission right away, but I try my best. I'm not perfect at this, but I try my best to ask that question fairly often: are you okay with me sharing this with the elders and staff? I don't want to be a gossip. I don't want to share a prayer request that you have with other people without your permission, because I do think that can be gossip. So I want to close in the final minutes I have on this episode and ask, okay, so how do we fight against this, right? I think I've given, as clear as I can, a description of gossip, some examples of it, some ways to know if and when you're actually engaging in gossip. But how do we fight this? Here's a couple principles. Of course, we need to seek to guard our tongue and to only speak good of others, right? We need to be very cautious when we embark upon sharing bad news about somebody. When we are about to share bad news with somebody, we need to guard our tongues. We need to seek the fruit of the Spirit in our speech. We need to apply all the principles that I've been talking about in this situation, get all the facts, get permission to share it. Make sure you go to the person in private and make sure that they are okay with you sharing it. I mean, all these things apply here. Guard your tongue, have self-control in your speech, and only seek to speak good of others. Another principle is share your concerns. Share this information with the person directly, right? So somebody comes to you and begins to gossip, or you think that they are about to gossip to you about somebody else. Look at them and say, "I'm not comfortable with this because this could be bordering on gossip. And so would you be okay with me reaching out to this person and asking them about this first?" And if they're not okay with that, chances are it's gossip. And by the way, that's a principle for you as well. If you're about to share something with somebody and you would not be okay with that person then getting on the phone with the person you're talking about, then you're probably gossiping. Okay, so don't listen to other people gossip. Share concerns about people with the person directly, not with other people. Make sure that you put these principles in place so that you can guard yourself against gossip. You should seek to speak. We've said this several times. Seek to speak with the fruit of the Spirit, to have your speech filtered with the fruit of the Spirit. Only talk with people who need to know about certain situations. Don't share it if it's none of their business. Again, we all have trusted friends that we go to when certain things happen in our lives, but only share with people who need to know. Only share with proper motives. So you need to pray for wisdom and discernment on your own heart. Make sure that you are taking the log out of your own eye before you inspect the speck in somebody else's eye. And ask other people to keep you accountable in this. So if you find yourself in a situation where you think, "I'm not gossiping right now, but I'm sharing this information with somebody else about another person," it's not gossip because I've applied all the principles we've talked about. ask that person to keep you accountable. Go to them and say, look, I'm sharing this with you because of X, Y, and Z. I need you to check my heart in this too. I need you to make sure that you are asking me about my motives, that you are making sure that I'm not falling into gossip in this moment. And ask another trusted friend to just watch out for you in this. If this is a particular struggle for you, ask somebody who you love and trust, who will see this in your life, who will pray for you, who will challenge you when they see you engaging in this, and who will encourage you in this fact. So I hope this is really practical, because again, this is such a deceptive sin. This is such a sin that I think we see it all over the place. We see it in our own lives. I see it in my life far more often than I want to admit. And I think we need to be good about checking each other in this. And so I just wanted to spend a few minutes talking about it. If you have more questions about this, or you want me to go a little bit deeper, or you feel like I missed something, or you feel like I was wrong about something, send me an email. I'd love to have some feedback and conversation. I'm willing to do follow-up episodes and all the stuff that I do. So email me at kennyroberts@missionwaychurch.org. Again, I'd love to hear from you if this is helpful, or you got some questions or concerns, whatever that may be. As always, thanks for listening. I would love it if you gave a rating or review, or shared this episode with a few friends if you think it would be helpful. I am always just encouraged by the people who listen and the feedback that I get on the podcast. So thanks for being a faithful listener. I pray that this has been helpful and encouraging to you, and Lord willing, I will be back next week with another episode. God bless.